This is one of their mobile kitchens that they actually...
Is that even some, what I call habitual...
Beautiful Stop and Shop in the Wilton. Penalty, but it was actually a tax, and that it...
Absolutely. What's the name of the show?
Good evening and welcome once again to the Marty Heiser Show. I know what you're thinking. It's like a bit of a hostage video here, but don't worry about it. There isn't some guy with an M16 and I don't have to say Allah Akbar or anything like that. I am not being held hostage. We have had a situation here because it's a very violent summer or early spring thunderstorm that happened. This tonight, so mark your watches, it's Thursday evening, May 10th at 9 p.m. And there's quite a thunderstorm going through, so all the lights went out. But you know, here at the Marty Heiser Show, we have a producer and a main person named Candy. I know, it's kind of a sweet name. She's gung-ho. She says the show must go on, so she put up these Klieg lights and everything. And the show will go on, because for God's sakes, we've got to bring you the show. Now, I have some thoughts that I want to share with you real quick. First of all, something good actually happened in Hartford. Believe it or not, something good. The Democrats and the GOP got together and passed a budget deal. Now, here's some highlights as represented by John Fry. It's bipartisan, no tax increases. The budget deal was reached. Both House and Senate will debate and vote on this bill before midnight. Highlights include no tolls, no minimum wage increase, no tire tax, a restoration of municipal dollars lost as a result of Malloy's cuts, like town aid to roads, and no EC cuts, restoration of Medicare Savings Program, funding state transportation fund, and more to come. What I like about this is no tolls. I really dreaded that. No minimum wage increase, no tire tax. I kind of like what I'm hearing, and for once, they got together and passed a budget. Maybe we're beginning to see a bit of a turn in Hartford. Now, our beloved president. Now, I know many people in my vast viewing audience here are Democrats, liberal Democrats, and so when you see Donald Trump and the Nobel Peace Prize mentioned in the same sentence, I know you go into convulsions. You actually break out in hives. It's actually a true thing. Mental health counselors are seeing a spike in people coming in just unsettled. They can't believe what a good job he's doing. Let's go to the highlights. Kanye West, bosom brother of our beloved President Donald Trump, the Iran deal, which was a disaster, giving $150 with a B billion dollars to the biggest state sponsor of terrorism. Who cooked up that great idea? And by the way, you know, sometimes you wonder if you fire someone, is it right to fire them? Is it wrong to fire them? But then after you fire them, they do something stupid like crash a car or cuss you out or knock over the clock on the way out the door or something like that. Look at what Iran's done since we've left the Iran deal. They start firing rockets into Israel from bases in Syria. No casualties whatsoever in Israel. Israel goes back and pounds them. And then they do the whole burning the flag thing right in the middle of their parliament. Death to America, death to America. I've been listening to this crap ever since 1979, 1980, when those half-baked imams came in and took over, which was a fairly cosmopolitan country up until then. Took our people hostage. The whole thing. I'm kind of getting sick of it. I couldn't support Trump more in getting out of that stupid thing. Unemployment, 3.9%. It hasn't been that low for 49 years. You got to go back to 1969. By the way, this, whatever his name was, Schneiderman, I mean, what is it with the liberal Democrats? I thought you guys were all like, you know, feminists and supporting women and all. I think it all comes down to abortion when you really think about it. Donald Trump in 2013 sent out this tweet. Wiener is gone. He saw that Wiener coming and going. Spitzer is gone. I think it was client number 9, something about black over-the-calf socks. Who knows? They keep files on this. Next, the lightweight AG, Eric Schneiderman. He's a crook. Wait and see. Worse than Spitzer and Wiener. Come to find out, first thing, the guy used a little mascara right here. Check it. Google it. Go ahead. Check it. I never trust a man in mascara. I'm just saying, except Alice Cooper, but that was more of a whole big thing. But that was the 1970s. I digress. Unemployment, 49-year low. The Treasury, are you sitting down? You might want to pour yourself a scotch because you're about to toast the president. In April, write this down, the Treasury took in $515 billion in 1 month, pretty good month. They spent $297 billion, making a record surplus of $218 billion, according to the Congressional Budget Office. They had broke the record of $190 billion, where you got to go back to 2000. Pretty good month. And remember, everyone said these tax cuts, all these tax cuts. Revenue to the government is increasing. You've heard it here first. Check it out. Google this stuff. When Reagan, during the 1980s, revenue to the Treasury doubled in the face of tax cuts. Because when you cut taxes, you increase economic activity. Rising tide lifts all boats. Don't make me go to the JFK video. You've seen it here before. It's a good thing. Mueller, and we're going to talk to our constitutional expert here in just a minute, but Mueller is being smacked down by judges. Even judges, he's going in there and they're saying, you know, you're going after Donald Trump's campaign manager for some sort of tax thing from 2000 and whatever. He said, you're just trying to do that so you can get after the president. And he finally came out and said, come on, man. Record history low in black and Hispanic unemployment. They have never seen numbers this low. No wonder Kanye is saying good things. 1.9 million people off food stamps. Remember the Obama administration? We were constantly adding people to food stamps. 4 million, right about 4 million new jobs. 14 states are showing a record unemployment. They've never seen unemployment this low in their entire history. I could go on, but my friend here, Matt Fitzgibbons, had it on his Facebook page. Does that look familiar?
Yeah.
Let's just hit the highlights. 3.9% unemployment. Korean War is over. Oh, did I mention 3 hostages from Korea showing up? We didn't have to give them pallets full of cash. We didn't have to give them bloodthirsty terrorists. We didn't have to kowtow to these guys. We just started saying, our button's bigger than yours, and it works. Who knew this would work? Where's Dennis Rodman? He actually gave the guy the book, The Art of the Deal. You can't make this up. One funny thought, these guys have been in solitary confinement for as long as they've been in there, some up to 2 years. They come out, they don't know Donald Trump is president until they get on the plane. Can you imagine? Hi, I'm the president. They must have those some sort of TV show. Anyways, Korean War is on the cusp of being over. These hostages are repatriated, and they're in good shape. Largest tax cut in U.S. history. ISIS is destroyed. 6.6% black unemployment, lowest ever. Trillions of dollars of money came back. Do you know that Apple is on the verge of being the first $1 trillion company? And they repatriated all that profit. Because Donald Trump said, come on, let's make a deal. Let's lower the capital or the corporate interest rate from 35% to 21%. He wanted 20, he took 21. All of a sudden, all this money keeps flowing in. It's a beautiful thing. Most dramatic deregulation in U.S. history. What exactly is the left resisting? I just had to get that off my chest. And Matt Fitzgibbons, thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me again.
Thank you for sitting through my little rant.
No, I agree with everything. It's really positive news.
There's tons of positive news.
There's more work to be done, though,
for my vast viewing audience here, I want to give you an offer here. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to offer you $1. Hold on. Let me get here we go. $1. You see me. I'm around town. I'm going to offer you $1. Go turn to another station. Come right back here. Come right back. Turn to MSNBC. Turn to CNN. I guarantee you're going to see a stripper named Stormy something or other, or you're going to see some, Cohen or a lawyer or something. They're still chasing the Russian deal. All this great stuff's happening. Go over, come back. If you don't see that on those other stations, when you see me next, ask for your dollar and I will hand it to you. And I know you're out there. Come and get it. But I doubt you're going to see anything but a bunch of nonsense about strippers and Russia, 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 and collusion, 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 when it's all a complete and utter hoax. Okay. Enough said. I just want to get that off my chest. Thank you so much for coming in. I appreciate it. You have a heart. You're an educator by profession. You taught in Japan.
I did many years. I taught, yes.
You've taught some of the elites in Manhattan.
That's right.
And you have this passion for the original documents of our country, the Bill of Rights, the concept of natural rights, the Federalists, the Anti-Federalists, the Constitution. What drives you? Why is there such a passion to get this information out there?
I went to a lot of schools. I went to 5 high schools in 4 years, and
How did that happen?
just
You kicked out or
no,
anything?
no,
Discipline
not
problem?
that bad.
Oh, no, you moved.
No,
Okay.
no, only recently has that been an issue. But so a lot of times I was the new kid, all right? So I hate bullies. I've always hated bullies. And the second thing is that I went over many different things historically several times in these different schools and had these big holes in my knowledge in other areas. So somewhere around the late 80s, early 90s, I decided that I'd just start from the beginning of history. I have a degree in philosophy, so reading old documents, I just love it. But I decided to start from the beginning and just understand as much of it as I could. And living overseas, I started to realize that what makes us unique here in the United States, particularly teaching multinational groups, is that while we're composed of all these other groups, the thing that binds us together are these simple but timeless principles in our founding documents. So the notions in the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, this is what allows us as a republic to be composed of everyone else in the world, but still be different. So that's where my passion is, and I've been playing music for forever. So in 2005, I released my first album, and I founded patriotmusic.com.
Right.
So I've kind of combined these two passions of trying to teach people about history, the philosophy of natural rights. I try to avoid partisan politics where I can, but I make no apologies for standing up for the Bill of Rights and the Declaration of Independence. You know, you would call me a gun nut, for example. And I have 4 albums, and I like spreading the word.
Well, there are 2 things that I want to play your song. This song is called "Promise on a Dream." I love how, well, you'll see a bunch of different photographs that are mixed in. It's a great video. It's kind of a catchy tune. I've actually found myself just humming it over and over again.
That's a good sign.
It's a really good song. But also, when we come back, I want you to talk about the difference between having our rights from God inalienable or rights given from a government, because
Sure.
what they give, they can take away. But let's play this video. It's a great song. This is on 3.
We built a promise on a dream.
That's my daughter sending me a text.
Nothing else the world has seen. We built a promise on a dream. We built a promise, we 13. We crossed the land bridge across the ocean a long, long time ago. We tracked the herds here, we followed fortune on the glacial ice and snow. We came as sailors, searching for adventure. We came in from the east. We crossed the ocean, we followed fortune, and our numbers they increased. Before those people stepped onto the shore, 2/3 of the first ones to die. 'Cause along with the trade goods, they brought new disease. The worst way that cultures collide. We built a promise on a dream, like nothing else the promise on a dream, like nothing else the world has seen. We built a promise on a dream, like nothing else the world has seen. We built a promise on a dream. We built a promise on a dream.
Very good, very good. No, I love that song. You know, it's interesting because one thing I gleaned from you too, when you talk about the original 13 colonies, they were really existing functioning governments that gave an immense amount of freedom to their citizens out from under the control of the British Crown, it seemed like. And so it didn't, they sort of lit this fire of individual freedom. And so when they came in with the Stamp Act and some of these other things, they had a ready crowd that were repulsed again. They liked their freedom. What was that like?
Well,
You
it was
talked about
contractual. I mean, many of the different colonies were formed for different reasons. Virginia colony, for example, was a business. The Massachusetts colony, and then Connecticut was for religious freedom. Rhode Island as a result of that. So there are lots of different reasons, but they got charters directly from the king and essentially wanted to be left alone.
Right.
From England's perspective, the mistake that they made was that they did leave them alone for about 150 years.
But they were doing well. They were prospering.
Extremely,
they were
yeah.
making their way
England
in
was
the
making a
world.
lot of money out of it as well.
Yeah.
And it was also a place to send troublemakers to some degree.
Yeah.
But the
Not
American
quite Australia, but I know what you're saying.
True, but the American people, indentured servants and things, but the American people were the highest, they had the highest rate of literacy anywhere in the world.
Even more than England.
Yes.
Jolly old
Very
London.
much, very much
you're
so.
more likely to be able to read and write living in colonial Boston.
But if you were living, for example, say in Woodbury, if you've ever been to the Historic Society there, and you imagine this place that's so far out in the middle of nowhere, okay? An average person had to be a veterinarian. They had to be a doctor. They had to be a school teacher. They had to be a farmer. They had to be a mechanic. They had to be an engineer. I mean, all of these things, a mom and a dad.
And one other thing, too, I would add on to that, they had to have a spirit of rugged individualism, adventure, and a desire to make something, to break out, to not live within the society. I mean, anyone that was anyone in London and some of the, in the old world wanted to stay there because they were going to inherit, daddy's, stamp shop or whatever it was. But it was the guys that had a twinkle in their eye, a sense of adventure, and wanting to be their own boss. That was the stock that came over here.
Well, they were familiar with the Magna Carta, for example, and they knew John Locke, the philosophy of natural rights. So they knew that, the way that Jefferson wrote it was that governments are instituted among men, deriving their powers from the consent of the governed.
Yeah.
In other words, governments are created by people because by giving up a few rights, there are advantages in living in groups.
Yeah.
But rights come from existence. So Americans understood this from the very, very beginning. So when England decided that they were going to reinterpret American rights, Americans realized exactly what was happening right out of the box.
Yeah.
England didn't plan on this, and we won.
Yeah, and they didn't respond too well. I mean, you had the Boston Massacre there, you had the Boston Tea Party. We did not respond too well. Now, one thing in your roots in philosophy, but what we're talking about in America and the freedoms in the Declaration of Independence, we hold these truths to be self-evident, and that we derive these rights to the pursuit of happiness, the right to freedom, freedom of speech, from our God, from a creator, and not from a government. And so we always withhold the right to overthrow that government when they no longer serve our purposes. And the Second Amendment is kind of tied in with that.
The Second
Talk about
Amendment
that a little bit.
well, the Second Amendment, absolutely. That's quintessential to the Second Amendment. I did some research some years ago, and if you don't mind the kind of a little pitch here.
Yeah.
But on my website, patriotmusic.com, I spent many months going back through every historical document that I could find that had to do with the principles of the Second Amendment, and it originates even pre-ancient Greece. There are many, many examples and many reasons for it, but the primary reason that every single one of the 13 colonies had a Second Amendment. There are logical reasons, for example, to be able to defend your home against invaders, or for example, to be able to capture criminals and things, that are wandering around, or whatever the case may be. But it's very expensive to to feed an army, to train an army, and to move an army. So the most logical thing to do is to have this thing called a militia, where the able-bodied group of the citizenry can become your military in times of need. And there are many examples in history where this is exactly what happened and exactly what was needed.
Yeah.
And Americans knew at the beginning of our republic that the average citizenry needed to be armed with the same quality and the same weapons as the average infantryman.
So you get the Minutemen.
You have to have this
So Captain
capability.
Tryon landed his boats down on Campo Beach and marched up to Danbury right here, put to the torch all the stores, and came back through Ridgefield.
That's right.
Benedict Arnold, yes, that was when he was good. Benedict Arnold was there, and he called the Minutemen. It wasn't all Ridgefield residents. They made a barricade where the Casagmo is now, and they fought it out.
So like you, I'm a student of history, and I find incredible parallels. I think that many of the answers to the problems that we're experiencing today can be found by looking at the past. Lots of things have been done in the past before, you know, not to get too partisan, but progressives, there's nothing progressive about what they're talking about, because all of these ideas aren't forward thinking. These are all ideas that have been tried many, many, many times in the past and have failed. One of the things I wanted to do with this video, for example, Promise on a Dream, was begin with Native Americans to show that people all over the world basically want the same things for each other, for their families, and all the rest of this. And I view every single person here as an American. You know, anyone who's a citizen. We embrace these principles, these concepts. And I have lots of friends from overseas, some of whom who've traveled here and some of whom haven't, who, particularly some friends in Africa whose countries have seen some horrible suffering, and they love the Constitution and the Bill of Rights.
Yeah.
You know, you meet people from Czechoslovakia or Soviet Union or from Poland, people who lived under, like my lead guitarist there, Rich Roger, his parents lived under the Nazis as well as the Soviets in Poland for many years. These are the people who absolutely love our founding principles because they know what the world is like without them.
Do you think we're seeing a rebirth of that? Has the pendulum swung
Both. We're
back?
splitting in two directions, and I would say that the primary reason for it is that we have this really bizarre concept of centralizing education with the Department of Education. We've gotten rid of civics in this country, and we're now teaching social studies. The idea of, for example, having a history month that focuses on just women or on just blacks or on just Latinos is inherently racist. What you should do is focus on good ideas, people who did incredible things for our species. And just, you can't get rid of racism until you stop talking about race, in my opinion. But these kids aren't learning. They're learning this propaganda that pushes this failed agenda that tyrants have tried over and over and over again, and there's no way to put this together to make it work. You know?
I mean, we just had, what was it, the 500th birthday of Karl Marx? And the New York Times said, Karl Marx, you were right, it worked. It worked.
Well,
we saw 100 million people killed the last century. You know, in Venezuela, they're hijacking food trucks because they can't feed each other. I mean, if you want to look at North and South Korea, you say, well, North Korea is kind of a dictatorship run by a family. Okay, but they have the moniker of socialism.
There are no collectivist governments that don't deteriorate into an aristocracy.
A bloodbath.
Because you always end up, and genocide.
Yeah.
But you always end up having party members who have more because they're more equal, they're more connected.
Yeah. I think it may have been the 200th birthday, not the 500th birthday.
But even Marx, if you brought it back today, with a time travel machine the minute before he died, he wouldn't have been a Marxist.
No. Listen, thank you so much. I really appreciate it so
Not at
much.
all.
I'm sorry if my rant went on too long. And if people want to get in touch with you, it's patriotmusic.com. Just Patriot Music. Go there and look up Matt Fitzgibbon, and we thank you very much for this.
That was great.
I appreciate it so much. Okay, speaking of saving our youth, the next gentleman you see, Bob McGuffey. And by the way, tonight it's like wall-to-wall patriots. Sometimes you lose heart. You think everyone's turning into someone, wearing kind of a pink hat and marching around Washington. Or you think everyone's a snowflake that needs to go to their safe zone because they're microaggressed because someone disagreed with them. But then you see guys like Bob McGuffey, who is part of the originator of the Tea Party. He's a patriot through and through. And he's talked from a historical, philosophical, cultural point of view about the fourth turning, about some of the different waves of culture that have happened in years of like 80 to 100 years. And he's asking about the millennials. He's sort of said to himself, now right now, if you're watching this show and you're a liberal Democrat, which you really can't swing a cat anywhere in the Northeast and not hit 5 liberal Democrats, pretty much if you're, you know, in your 30s or 40s or 50s, frankly, you're kind of a lost cause. Even all this good news that's going on, you're still going to go, oh, Donald Trump is just a reality TV guy. There's really no changing you. There's really no convincing you of it. So what Bob McGuffey is talking about is that the millennials, the Generation Xers, which, by the way, are some of the most conservative, patriotic generations coming up, they are the ones that are going to have to carry the fight forward. But thank you so much for coming in.
Right, Marty,
I like the
pleasure to be
jacket.
here.
This is kind of a Western. Did you
Yeah, a little bit.
tie up the horse out front and here you are?
I did.
Did you?
He's out there. I got to get and feed him.
Yeah, you did. They don't mind the rain. The horses are fine.
Well, he's under a canopy right now. So.
But thanks for coming in. Now tell me about this fourth turning.
Right.
And what we're talking about, the millennials and how that is kind of holding out hope for conservatives.
This is the book people should, you know, if they want a good read, if they like history, take a read of this. It's getting some publicity these days, and it was written 20 years ago by 2 demographers and historians that had written about the generations, and they studied generations. And after doing that for about 15 years, they began to see something in history, looking back. And to the long story short, what this book looks at, it looks back to the 1400s, and it counts off 7 cycles of history that are about 80 to 100 years. Mm-hmm. And history is and the times are really driven by the generations that rise up and the characteristics, you know, that they're imbued in with when they're young, whether they grow up in a crisis or in a calm period of time or whatever. And they saw that these 80 to 100 year cycles were broken up into 4 repeating phases of a crisis that's followed by a high, that's followed by an awakening, that's followed by an unraveling, and then back into another crisis. And so they see this unfolding, right?
Give me some history points. Like,
well, right through the Revolutionary War.
Okay, so 1776.
Yeah, that era, that 20-year era of that struggle was the crisis. Of course, when it was over, you know, everything was optimistic. There was a high, you know, we're going to build this new country. And so then ideas get challenged again. You get into the 1820s, new ideas are coming in, they take hold, and they call that the awakening period. And ultimately, it leads to an unraveling. The 1850s is the unraveling, mm-hmm. And what happens? Boom, Civil War. Yeah. Another crisis. You come out of that, it repeats and builds itself through the early part of the 20th century. And what was the unraveling? The 1920s, the roaring 20s. It was unraveling. What does it lead to? Yet another crisis, the Depression, culminating in World War II. Huh. What happens after that? Things we have firsthand knowledge of. I was born in the early 50s. The 50s, the high. America can do no wrong. Everything is
Chicken
going
in
right.
every pot. Chevy
Everything
in every
is great. And then what happens?
Levittown.
Then what happens in the 60s? An awakening. The new ideas. The old are challenged. And so that goes on for about 20 years into an unraveling, which would be basically the 80s and 90s. And these guys are sitting in 1997. They put this together and they predicted there will be another crisis in the middle of the next decade of the aughts, you know. So 2005 or something. Sure enough, 2008, that financial crisis kicked off the current crisis, which is called the fourth turning. It's the fourth turning of the secular.
So the fourth turning, they're saying, is the financial crisis.
Well, that kicked
August
it off. We're in
2008.
It'll last 20 years or so. We're in it. It has not climaxed, contrary to popular belief. Most people think that financial crisis was significant and big, but was put to rest. It has not. That's the beginning.
So it's still slumbering. We're still going to see
Well, we're
something.
in the crisis. What is happening right now?
I mean, when you went Revolutionary War, Civil War, World War II, then financial crisis. I mean, those are 3 bigs in one kind of, I mean, you know, I'm not saying it was good that everyone lost 30%
It hasn't
of the house
climaxed yet.
Really, you think there's still more to come?
Oh, most assuredly, because we were seeing it. In the Tea Party, we came out and said, basically, the role of the Tea Party was, there's a crisis. We rang the bell. You know, our government, our republic is under attack. What we're having is tyrannical forces are moving out. I mean, the left was just on the march. More control, more regulation, more reduction in individual liberty. I mean, that characterized the entire Obama era. There's no doubt about it.
But don't you think a democracy has a self-cleansing approach, a way to right the ship? Now watch this. So you got FDR, and then it went to Truman, and then from Truman it went to Eisenhower, and then from Eisenhower it went to, who's after Eisenhower?
Kennedy.
It went to Kennedy, so the pendulum swung again. And then from Kennedy,
It really did.
And then from Kennedy, it ended up going to Nixon.
really did.
Then from Nixon, it went to Carter. Then it went to Ronald Reagan.
But it
Then
wasn't
from Ronald
going
Reagan. It went well a little bit.
Think of a ratchet.
But I'm just saying, it
No, it
sets itself
doesn't.
up. Well, we went from Obama,
That's what
and
they
now
tell
we went
us.
to Trump.
The game is
Wait, who is they?
the establishment. The they is the establishment.
But we just had a president that ran who was like, you know,
the Republicans and
establishment hated him.
Democrats will tell you that there's a pendulum. It's a ratchet. We haven't lived through any government reduction yet. It moves forward, and then it pauses, and then it moves forward.
Hold
again.
on, we had a good month. We're
That's now,
we're 218 billion for April. That's a good month.
218 billion of
In the positive.
Oh, yeah, well-
we took in 515
but in the
billion.
big
We spent
picture-
297.
But in the big picture, you look at the growth of government, it's one graph going up like this.
Okay, but let me.
right?
I don't mean to come against your book here, but just
fine.
another perspective is Donald Trump. Everyone hated him. The Democrats hated him. The Republicans hated him. The establishment hated him. Everyone did, and he's going in there like a bull in the china shop.
Donald
and,
Trump.
you know,
well, we said it here at this desk back in November of 16.
Okay.
Donald Trump was the battering ram that we pushed in to stop the machine.
all right.
But it isn't going backwards.
So
It gets
problem
stopped.
solved.
Look at the budget he just signed, right? It's more $1 trillion deficits. There is a consequence to this.
That budget was the biggest since Barack Obama put forth the stimulus.
There's a
budget.
consequence to this. You can't do this forever. There's a lot of opinion, and we can have a discussion over
we got these
how
great
it's going
printing
to
presses, though. You just push a button and you just print
end.
more money.
Yeah, that will come to an end. Yeah, that will.
All right. So what happens next?
Well,
Talk about the millennials and
the
how they're gonna
realization
save
I
us.
came to as a
God
Tea
help
Party
us.
leader, we came out, we did everything we could. Who were we really? We were really aging boomers. It was mostly boomers out there who knew their history, who knew this had to be stopped, who went out and said this has to stop. But
And it was socialized medicine. It was Obamacare that kind
we-
of sparked it, right?
And the TARP, it was the spending and the bailouts.
Okay.
But we're not going to be able to continue to lead us out of this. And once you realize that, it's up to the millennials. And the popular, the propaganda from the media is, the millennials are all with the left. And many of them are because of the indoctrination in the academic institutions, but they're not all over there. And heck, we don't have any choice but to awaken them to liberty, individual freedom, living in government. That is what's going to lead you out of this. The millennials that really get what's going on realize this debt burden is being put right on their back, right? 21 trillion, right on their back. They realize that is going to have to be paid off. We've handed it to them. So if the ones that are serious, the ones that understand it, have to be able to lead out of this. And that's what we need to do, is to awaken them to that. You got it.
Caller, do you have something to add? Are we on the right track? And by the way, how do you like the lighting?
The light, it's a little dark, and you're getting different camera angles.
Well, all the electricity went down here at the studio. There's been a lightning storm, so we're soldiering on. But what are your thoughts about what the guest is talking about?
Well, Marty, I want to bring to your attention, I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but part of the biggest problem in America is our economy. And the problem with our economy is where the money is created. Now, believe it or not, most of the money that's created in this country is created through mortgages. And the problem is we're taking principal and interest where people have to pay back principal and interest from a pool of money that is only created from principal. So, Marty, the whole economic system is designed to fail. And that's why we have bankruptcy courts, because the economists know.
All right. Hold on. Let me pass this along to the author or the commentator. So, what do you think about that? Interest?
Well, it's an over-leveraged economy. It's all built on debt. The mortgage is one part of it. Everything's built on debt. The credit card debt, education debt. Certainly mortgage debt. It's all a debt-driven economy. It's very dangerous. It's been overdone, and the government is just taking too many of the resources and borrowing from the future. So this hasn't stopped.
How are we going to reach some millennials? And I want to have Dave Straight join us because he's practically a millennial. He's a millennial at heart. So he's going to be joining us now to talk about this as well. But how do we? One thing I mentioned. A month ago, there was a shooting down in Florida, and the students had this walkout. And so I reached out to high school students. I really got their name out of the paper, and I said, would you come in and talk about this? I got 2 students from Newtown High School and 3 students from Ridgefield High School. I didn't know them from Adam, but they had participated in the walkout. They were high school students. I wanted to hear what they had to say. 3 of the 5 students, turns out, were very pro-Second Amendment, very conservative in their view, not buying into the party line that, gun control, we got to, have safe zones, and, we got to confiscate all the guns. They were saying that was not the right way to go. And that was, it's anecdotal, but I was fairly encouraged. I think the millennials and Generation Xers might be more conservative than we're giving them credit for. They're not buying the line.
There's a segment, I'd love to figure out how many there are, but if you go on a website called Red Alerts, they over the last 6 years they've recognized 30 under 30 who are out there making it happen. All conservatives who are writing, who are getting on TV, who are organizing, who are holding positions. People like Erin Stewart here in Connecticut. She was on it a couple of years ago. She was picked. And so I've gone in, looked at their names, I've looked at their websites. There are many groups, and my political partner and I just wrote an essay which I had given to you, which we're waiting to see if American Spectator is going to print it. But it's really it's called The Seventh Crisis, which is the last crisis that would be in this coming after this book, and it's basically the millennials' hour of decision. They're going to have to decide. And we want to help them. And the role that our generation would play is according to the way Strauss and Howe lay out, we are the prophet generation. We were born in the high. And the elder prophets are the ones that impart the wisdom onto the heroes that are born in the unraveling, and the millennials are born in the unraveling.
What do you think of all this, Dave?
I think he's an alarmist. It's only $270 trillion of global debt. What's the big deal?
Yeah, it's only 270.
270, yeah. So a couple things. Can I start out with a couple shout-outs?
Please, yes.
Mr. Simon. Shout out to Mr. Simon. Love Mr. Simon.
Tony Simon, we love you out there. Keep those drawings coming.
Just stay away from your wife.
So yeah, try not to, drawing pictures of a guy's wife. I don't know. That's taking advantage.
A little shout out to Eric Trump, a really good friend of mine who has a son that's special needs. Really bad health problems, potential health problems. He's doing work for Eric Trump, and Eric Trump, he said, Eric Trump's probably the nicest guy you're ever going to meet. And Eric Trump told me, he said, look, anything at all you need for your son, I will make that happen for him. That's pretty cool. Those are the little anecdotal stories that you don't always get. Mm-hmm. Touching base a little bit, can we talk about Trump a little bit?
Why not? Yes.
Well, what's the word that comes to mind, like winning or killing it?
Yeah, killing it. I mean, we just went through, he's getting the
record
Koreans.
Unemployment.
Record unemployment, yeah.
Record revenues, record drop in the trade deficit. And who did the Trump tax cuts really hurt?
The Northeast.
Donald Trump. I mean, here's a guy who has the majority of his assets in New York in real estate that's going to get killed. He didn't do it to line his pockets. He shot himself in the foot with that. Yeah. The guy looks out for us. I think that's pretty cool, don't you?
I really like the guy.
He's also I don't know where he comes up with it. In 2013, he came out with that tweet, and he was bagging on that guy, the
Schneiderman.
Yeah, Schneiderman.
Yeah.
Bagging on the guy, going, "You ain't seen anything. Harvey's bad. You ain't seen nothing yet."
Weiner is gone. Spitzer is gone. Next is lightweight AG Eric Schneiderman. He's a crook. Wait and see. Worse than Spitzer and Weiner. That was September 11th, 2013.
And then in the campaign,
Plus global warming. I mean, it's been very cold spring. He got that under control. It's unbelievable. This
well,
guy's
and
done-
then Trump comes out in the campaign. He says NATO's got to pay their fair share.
Yeah.
Right? NATO's got to pay.
2% of GDP. Seems fair. Nice round number.
What did Angela Merkel come out and say this past week? She said we can no longer rely on the U.S. to defend us. Oh, just a small detail, you only have 4 combat-ready jets in your whole arsenal. That's it for the whole nation of Germany. Yeah, maybe you should pay more than a nano pinch of your GDP for self-defense.
I know a little bit about the Germans. It's maybe good that they're not arming again. We had to go in there twice the last century and kick their ass. So we'd had to militarily take action against them. So maybe it's best that they just make Volkswagens and stuff like that. Sorry, go ahead.
You're not going to want to hear this, but still,
Syria?
no evidence of chemicals and no proven dead bodies. There's no morgue full bodies. There were no funerals. There were no funeral marches. Nothing, Marty. No chemicals, but we bombed them to send a message to North Korea. God bless America.
I hold to that. I think it's a worldwide chessboard and made a few moves. Caller, quickly, do you have a comment? Quickly.
Yes, Marty, I would like to, my next show is going to be called Pay for Play. And first of all, you have to turn Dave's mic up, but I want to hear your guys' response to the fact that Cohen has gotten caught by paying, he was paid over $1 million from the artists. I mean, they got caught with their hand in the cookie jar, and Trump was supposed to drain the swamp. And what does he do? He fills it with his own critters. So, Dave, what is your opinion on this pay-for-play?
Okay. All right, I'll ask him. We'll ask him. Yeah, what about that? Trump's private fixer, lawyer, that somehow they've got their bank's records and they've been leaked. And by the way, you got to get your mic up, supposedly. But supposedly he's gotten money from Novoas, he's gotten money from AT&T, and
they leak everything but the proof that there was Russian collusion because they
well,
can't
the collusion's
find
coming.
any.
There's
Or
collusion's
the
coming.
notion that somehow or other the Clinton Foundation wasn't pay to play. Even though her speaking fees have gone from $500,000 when they thought she could still have some influence down to, say, $25,000. You talk about deflation or depression, she's feeling it right now.
It's like a purse at Macy's. She's been downgraded quite a bit.
Well, I don't want to quote Hillary Clinton because she is quite despicable, right? But you remember Nancy Pelosi's Mary Antoinette comment about kind of let them eat cake, $1,000 is no big deal.
I believe she said
Kinda
crumbs.
Yeah. So Hillary comes out and says that the $29.5 billion rail tunnel project for the Northeast is Trump is being petty about $30 billion. They won't give him a penny to build a wall that's actually going to do something, but they want to invest in something that's kind of ridiculous like that.
Well,
yeah.
As for Cohen, this standard operating procedure down in the swamp is to try to influence those that are close to power, try to make connections.
By
And I'm sure
access.
money went into him. But to make the blanket statement that he's filling in his own credit, I mean, what else can the left say? And you're not going to drain that thing in a day. And it's awful. It's just one big swamp. And it's just not going to happen today. But it doesn't make Trump a hypocrite. Trump didn't have to take any money from anybody to become the president, for crying out loud. He doesn't owe anybody anything. And remember, folks, he's doing the job for nothing. He's the first one, man. You didn't see Barack Obama turn down the $400,000 a year, or Bill Clinton, or anybody else.
Yeah.
He did. He's doing it for nothing. So he ain't in it for the money. And anybody that thinks he is like sniffing down the wrong trail. And keep going there.
Yeah.
Just don't drag anybody.
It's so funny because 91% of the mainstream media news is anti-Trump.
Yeah.
And by the way, that dollar challenge is out there right now. Go ahead, turn to MSNBC, turn to CNN. I'll bet you $1 they're saying something bad about Trump. Go ahead, turn. And then when you see me next, if they aren't, if they're talking about the hostages being released, if they're talking about great economic news, if they're talking about unemployment at historic lows, I will give you $1. Just come up and ask, I'll give you $1. But look over there. They're hacking on Trump. And it's working because the more they hack, the higher he goes up in the polls. So let's see what's going to happen.
Marty, we coined a term in our essay. It's called the enemedia, E-N-E media, because they're the enemy. And they are, and they've been doing this game for a long time, and we've known it. But it's rich to watch it because everybody's seeing it now. Because
it's so obvious.
Yeah, it's so obvious.
You just hate the guy. Yeah. But I mean, you got to give it to Trump. He gives it right back to him.
The hostages got out today, and you know, Trump.
Bring on the stripper. Stormy Weaver has something to say.
Trump had something to do with it. But what do they do over on NBC? They're throwing roses at Kim, saying, could he be the change agent, the revolutionary character? I mean, could he be the transformative force to change the Korean Peninsula? You know, it's like at the end of the 80s, Time magazine gave Man of the Decade to Gorbachev. Yeah. They wouldn't give it a rank.
It's unbelievable. Trump
it's just it's static you put up with. It's like mosquitoes itching you. But more every day, more and more people.
And she's defending Tony Cardenas, who's this rep from California, who's alleged to have molested a teenage girl, drugged her and molested her.
Isn't that nice?
I mean, they're despicable. Meanwhile, on the right, they kind of walk the walk. And in Indiana, now they're saying that life, you can no longer abort a baby once there's a beating heart. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's the moral disparity between the two groups is just so extreme. I don't
well, even with Schneiderman, they were saying that there were liberal Democratic leaders, women in the party that says, look, you can't turn in Schneiderman, you can't say anything bad about him, he's too valuable to the party. It's like, okay, slapped you around a bit, but you got to take one for the team because he could be our next, governor of New York, our next candidate. So, yeah, the hypocrisy is crazy.
They did for Clinton. That was the basic bottom line.
Oh, and it goes to today. The Town and Country magazine's having a party. They invite Monica Lewinsky. You can't make this up. And then all of a sudden, Bill Clinton's like, oh, I might want to go to the party too. And then all of a sudden, Monica, you're out. Bill, you're in. And Monica takes to Twitter. It's like you can't make this stuff up. The hypocrisy is unbelievable. But I do think it comes down to just abortion. I really do. If you allow abortion to take place, then you can do whatever you want, say whatever you want. That's the big issue. But I don't think that the younger generation coming along is. I don't think they are. I mean, with some of those tapes coming out,
it's all out of proportion. But I was told. Quote when I first got into Tea Party movement, and people said to me, liberalism is a mental disorder, and I knew they were wacky, But at this point in time, wow! I mean, it's true.
Wait a sec. We're back. Our cameras are on. Yeah. Here we are. By the way, just so you know, this is May 10th, Thursday night, May 10th. There was a violent lightning storm, so all the electricity in the studio went out. It was
Trump's fault.
It was Trump. I blame Trump. But Candy, our fearless leader, said the show must go on. So we've created these bonfires that are shining light on us, and we're going ahead. We're forging ahead because we've got a lot to say. What else do you got?
Well, you want an Obamacare update?
Sure.
Okay, how many people since 2016 have lost their health insurance in America?
Well, I'm one of them. My wife and I did. Oxford Health Plan. Our premiums went from $700 a month to $2,700 a month. Our deductible went from $1,000 to $10,000. So more premium, more deductible. I go to my mailbox after working all day and get a check for $700. I like when people send checks. If you'd like to send a check to me, just go and fill it out and send it to 92 Spectacle Lane, and I'll receive it. So I get the check. Oh wait, I can't do that? Okay, scratch that. But I get the check and
Sales did that once.
Come find out that my insurance has been canceled. We didn't have a claim. We didn't have anything. It was just you're canceled after they raised my premiums and my deductibles. So I'm one of those people that have lost their insurance.
Well, it's kind of funny because when Obamacare was
That's not funny. I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
I'll tell you when to laugh. You can laugh. When Obamacare went into place, everybody marveled that everybody was signing up for Obamacare because, well, it was free. And then they phased that out, the free stuff, and all of a sudden people had to pay for it, and nobody could afford it. So 4 million people have lost their health insurance since Obamacare was implemented. It's staggering. And next year, healthcare premiums for certain providers will go up 90%. 90%.
Yeah.
So, yeah, anytime the government gets involved, good things never seem to happen.
That's
do they?
true. Look at
Not at
Venezuela.
all. See, one of the key problems as soon as Obamacare came rolling out was the mandate that you had to have all these coverages, and they made the young have to buy something, and instead the young went and paid the fine instead. When what they should do is they should add high deductible, catastrophic policies young people could buy or anybody could buy, and the more different competing policies you would have, the better off you would be. And also, we need to know the prices of what we're paying for. There needs to be price discovery at the point of purchase, and you got to be involved in that rather than a third-party payer with low copays. Because what do most people do when they have a $5 or $10 copay? They go down to the doctor for anything. They overuse the system.
Yeah.
You need higher copays, and you need price discovery, and you need some price competition, which you'd get in an open market. The LASIK market for the eye surgery is not covered by insurance, and that's very competitive, and the prices have come down over the last 20 years, big time.
That's interesting.
It is very interesting.
Yeah, you can do like case studies like that and compare that with the VA, which is total socialized
You just have to get these
medicine, and it's a
socialists.
disaster.
You have to get these socialists out of office who they just refuse to listen to facts. Himes and the rest of them, man, forget it. They're just flat out socialists. You listen to Malloy, you listen to Murphy, Himes, Blumenthal. Oh my God. I mean, they're all marching to the beat of Bernie Sanders. And I mean, what did we just fall off a tournament? How many times do we have to run this experiment, right?
I
It's
agree.
been run.
I agree. Well, they had the 200th anniversary of Karl Marx,
Yeah.
and the New York Times said, Karl Marx, you were right. Where were they right? Where is this
I
communism
tweeted it
thing
back at
worked out so
Himes. I said, your hero is 200 years ago today was born, man.
Anyway, what else you got?
This is going to bore you to tears, but the yield curve is flattening.
Yeah.
The 2-10 spread is flattening. That's kind of a big deal.
Okay.
Anytime it's ever gone to this level, it's almost 100% certain that a recession or a hiccup is on the horizon. What's interesting on this is, if the U.S. economy does get dragged down at all, it gets dragged down by Europe and China. Because with these Trump tax cuts, where all of a sudden the U.S. is now a competitive place to grow a business, start a business.
Sure.
We've got low energy prices, competitive tax rates, and we're repatriating $4 trillion to the U.S.
Yeah.
That's creating a vacuum in Europe for capital. So that capital's coming this way. Their economies are feeling pressure. China is so messed up right now that I think if there's going to be like an economic flu that spreads around the globe, it's going to start in China. Watch China closely.
But all this is good when we're repatriating our money, when companies are moving back, when manufacturing is moving back. The standard of living is increasing in the United States. You're saying we're going to run out of places to sell stuff to?
Well, I don't know. I mean, look, our trade deficit right now is still $40 billion a month. We've got a long way to go. If I was at 30,000 feet taking a look at planet Earth, I'd say the trade deficit over the next, I'm already disappointed to think that Trump is going to be out of office someday. Okay, it's another 6 years, I get that. I'm already kind of like getting a little depressed, but somewhere in the next 6 years, I think our trade deficit may come down. I'm going to make a prediction on the show. It's going to come down to zero because the U.S. is going to be the biggest oil exporting country on the planet, number one. Number two, we're going to become an exporting manufacturing Goliath again. What's going to happen in America in the next 6 years is going to blow your socks off.
I'm waiting for it. I feel the buzz out there. I'm telling you, there's a real buzz out there. People are spending money. People are getting.
They're watching the show.
They're watching the show. They're getting their house painted, which painting a house is like 10 grand around. Depending on your house.
Whoa.
And yours we could do for $2. No, I'm just kidding. I'm saying a very small house. Look,
We got that on tape.
He spends all his money on his jackets. Look at those jackets.
He's pretty dapper.
He's looking good. He's looking good.
See, I went with the yellow shirt.
I've actually never seen you. You never invited me over. You've been to my house, right?
Yes, I have.
That's what I'm saying. So let's Anyways, but the point is, what was my point? People are spending money.
Things are looking up, baby.
Things are looking up. But it's $10,000 or so to paint a house. But people have put that off. They put it off for about 10 years. It's almost like the lost decade.
Yeah.
And but now they're coming out of their holes and they're saying, hey, I got to fix up the house, and my real estate prices might start coming back, and so they're good. Lightning round. Give us 30 seconds of what we need to do to reach the millennials, and then you close us.
Well, if you know millennials, talk to them. If you're a patriot, if you're a Tea Party type person and believe in the founding principles of this country, tell some millennials about it, because many of them aren't taught it in school, unfortunately. So show them that individual liberty, free enterprise, limited government, and smaller federal government is the way to go in this country, and that's the way to lead out of these crises.
You'd be encouraged. Remember all those high school kids again? And then they brought the T-shirts in the next week and everything. Close us out.
What's fascinating to me right now, if you look at the global stage, back in the Reagan era, you could name 10 really, really dominant, popular world leaders, right? And they kind of came and went. Now what you have is strong men around the world. You've got Putin for life. You've got, whatever his name is in China, for life.
Yep.
Yeah.
You've got Trump, who's probably the strongest world leader we've had in maybe 50 to 100 years. And it's fascinating to watch these powers play out.
Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us. This was like survival television. We brought you the show. We didn't say there's a storm, the electricity's out, let's go home. We came and we produced. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week. Same bat time, same bat station. Right here, we'll have a great show, and the lights will be back on.
Tony.
Good night. See you, Tony.